Is anybody over at the G-20 actually talking about the small business owners? Anybody talking about the people who are responsible for generating 70% of all new jobs created in the last 10 years? The small business owner, the person that gets up with a dream every day and goes in and just tries to do it. Oh, and one more thing they decided. Yeah, they've decided to borrow more money or to print another $1 trillion, whatever. They're all pitching in together to give it to the IMF. Fantastic, isn't it? This selfish trading of temporary gain for long-term suffering of everybody else reminds me of something that someone very wise once said. Of course, he's a hate monger, I warn you. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Hate monger of the day? Bing, bing, bing. I'd like to say, who is Ben Franklin? Yes. Do you think that the foreign diplomats at the G20 really care about you? Do you think they really care about the American that is struggling and driving to work every day and busting their butt? Or do you think they might have a little bit of contempt for the American people who have been living on the hog, high on the hog, way too long? Global politicians and global corporations are playing games. They will get rich by building a box for the American entrepreneur to live in. They may think that they can end American sovereignty and start internationalism, but they haven't met the Americans that I have, who, beginning on tax day, will kick their way out of that box that they refuse to be placed in. Here's Yaron Brook. He is the executive director of the Ayn Rand Center. Okay, so tell me the good news about what happened yesterday. It's fantastic.
Well, I mean, there is no good news about what happened yesterday. Basically, what's going on in London is world leaders have come together to establish a kind of a global socialist system. And there is nobody. You said Geithner represented capitalism. There was nobody there representing capitalism, because capitalism is the dirty word at this conference. They blame this crisis on capitalism. They claim that it is business and banks that caused this crisis, when this crisis was caused by the Federal Reserve, by the central bankers, and by government regulations. Business is not the cause of this.
Help me out here. Nobody, I mean, I heard a quote today, who was it, from Geithner, who said, we're gonna tighten down and batten down the hatches, and we're gonna put the regulation in to make sure this kind of collapse never happens again. I happen to remember the beginning of the Fed. I happen to read a little bit about when they came in. The Fed came in so there would never be a depression again. There would never be a problem. There'd never be a bubble collapse. This is what they've been telling us the whole time. These are the people that created the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, the Fed came in supposedly to do away with depressions immediately. It came in 1914. By 1929, the Great Depression was caused by the Federal Reserve. Most economists agree with that. That's not some controversial, wacky idea. The Federal Reserve created the inflation of the 1970s, and the Federal Reserve created the problem we're seeing today. In the regulations they put in place were supposed to protect us. Banks would never fail. But the regulations themselves put the bankers in a straitjacket where they were forced to do things that were completely irrational, and therefore led us to the kind of catastrophe that we have today. And what Geithner says, the hedge funds need supervision, that is ridiculous. I mean, hedge funds have supervision. It's called the market. Let them fail. If you let Bear Stearns fail, if you let Citibank fail, that's the regulator. You don't need a bunch of bureaucrats in Washington regulating the behavior of really sophisticated, smart investors. Let the market alone. The bad guys fail. They can't make money. Nobody wants to invest with them.
You know what really makes me upset about the hedge fund thing is John Edwards was in a hedge fund. Chelsea Clinton works for a hedge fund. They all work for hedge funds. They all knew what all of this was going on, but they had an opportunity to not only get rich themselves, but also to be able to take that money, take it and pour it right into their own campaigns. It was gravy city for these fat pigs.
Yeah, but let's remember, I mean, one of the things I don't like is when we blame big corporations, we blame hedge funds, and we blame financiers. I don't believe they deserve this blame. Hedge funds serve a vital function in capitalism. So do the bankers.
When I said fat pigs, and that was probably a little
That was the politicians.
Okay. It was. That was the politicians. I can't think of any of them that might be fat or piggish.
I mean, with the problem with the bankers and the problem with the hedge funds and the problem with the financial system is not the bankers and the financiers. The problem is the level of government intervention, the level of control, the restraints that are put on them, and the Federal Reserve stands behind all of this. It is the true systemic risk in this economy is the Fed. It is the true systemic destroyer in this economy. That's the Fed. And now they want to regulate themselves, right? They're going to be the systemic risk regulator.
Okay, well, first of all, there's two things. First of all, they're saying they want more regulation. They have plenty of regulation. It was just not used. Bernie Madoff, the SEC, was told over and over and over and over again, they didn't do anything about it. Yet nobody is looking to Washington or the regulators themselves. Tim Geithner, the guy who is now running everything, he didn't do anything as the chair in New York. He had plenty of power to stop all of this stuff. Why is it, Yaron? What needs to be said to the American people before they get it, before they understand that this is a mirror show? Everybody's saying, no, 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 look at those guys over there. Look at those guys. So the blame comes off of the Fed. The blame comes off of the Treasury. The blame comes off the last administration, this administration, and the last Congress. That's where the trouble is.
Absolutely, and it's worse than what you're saying, because it's not just that they didn't do anything. Wow. What they did made it worse. Made it much worse. Bailing out Bear Stearns made it worse. But what the American people need to learn, and this is, I think, the important lesson, is that we don't need regulations. We don't need control. What the American people need to learn is to trust the profit motive, to trust the self-interest of businessmen. That self-interest is what creates the wealth, what creates the jobs, what created this country. We need to go back to this idea that pursuing your happiness, that involves pursuing productive activity and producing wealth. Pursuing your happiness is a moral endeavor. And these businessmen who create all this wealth are moral heroes. They're not villains, and we don't need the government to supervise that they do the right thing. They do the right thing because you know who penalized them? Their shareholders, investors, the marketplace. You can't cheat the marketplace.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You know what?